Hello, geniuses. If you are watching this on video, you will observe that we are in a different location today because my dad thinks watching football is more important than his daughter's hopes and dreams. So we are in my bedroom today. And my question to you to open up this podcast episode is, what is your favorite fast food? And I know I say this a lot with my really random, weird, obscure questions that knowing what somebody's favorite fast food is should be a compulsory first date question because it can tell you a lot about a person. You are what you eat. So if you're making questionable food decisions, that is very important for me to know. For example, one of my really, really good friends, Simran, told me that she loves Taco Bell. And Taco Bell is probably her favorite fast food. And I can't be her friend anymore. I feel like I need to block her after that. And I've been thinking about it really deeply because how? Taco Bell is the worst. And I don't know if it's maybe the Taco Bell in England, because obviously Taco Bell is an American thing and it's like, it's completely an American concept. And obviously when you bring chains over to the UK, like they change the recipes and the things that they put in it because, here in the UK, we don't allow consumptions of certain chemicals and toxins that is just liberally free in the land of America. So maybe it's that, and it's just, to me, I'm just like, whatever chemicals you're not including is really messing up the flow of this meal. I personally, before they got cancelled, I was the biggest McDonald's eater. I think I consumed before probably February, maybe January, I consumed McDonald's every single week. It was my cheat meal. It would get me excited. I'd be foaming at the mouth for those McDonald's chips. I'll just be like, those McDonald's chips, a chicken select, a 5 chicken select with some smoky barbecue sauce and an apple pie. Top it off with a large Sprite, no ice. I haven't had McDonald's like that in a while because for obvious reasons. And then after there was the boycott of McDonald's because of the genocide, I just went off cold turkey and I haven't really been back. I just don't have this craving. I don't have this tolerance, but that's what a genocide will do for you. It really leaves a disgusting taste in your mouth. And if avoiding eating McDonald's is the sacrifice I have to pay to give some form of support, then I'm very happy to do so. So what became my recent obsession? Now, I have two big ones, and they're quite shocking, to be honest. So one of them is Popeyes, which isn't that shocking because where I live, the Popeyes is right across the McDonald's. So it was an easy habit to just put over. In McDonald's, I only get the chicken stuff because I don't really like consuming beef burgers that I don't make myself. Fast food beef burgers literally taste synthetic. They don't taste like cow, they taste like flipping unicorn. So I don't eat that. But Popeyes is just all chicken, so it's just right up my alley, and good chicken burger with cheese. Classic. Oh, and they have that weird hot spicy mustard thing. Hot spicy honey. Oh my God, so good. So good. But I've also recently developed a Nando's obsession, which is very strange because I used to be one of those Nando's haters. I used to be I don't really get it and I don't really crave Nando's. If you were to ever give me a choice, I would never say Nando's. But, exam season at Cambridge does weird things to you because I began craving Nando's every week, and I kept craving that, 4 boneless chicken thighs, long stem broccoli, peri salted chips combo. And I was just bro, what's going on? Every week I'm searching for it. I'm feeding for it. I'm dying for it. And so then that used to be my thing, Popeyes or Nando's. Nando's is a little bit on the pricier side, but I would always just go back and just always consume and eat Nando's. And I'd convince myself that Nando's is a lot healthier than Popeyes. I don't know if that's true. Don't quote me on that. But I convinced myself that was the case. And addiction, even now thinking about it, I had Nando's yesterday. And I was thinking about, oh my God, I need Nando's now. But one thing that has happened over the course of my Nando's obsession, which began in May and has continued on since then, is also the fact that I have changed my order, because the order is also important than the restaurant. Do you get what I mean? For me, for example, using, I don't know, KFC, if I asked you, what is your favorite fast food restaurant? And you're like, KFC, I'd be like, oh, okay, babe, that makes sense. And then you were to tell me my favorite meal in KFC is the salad. I'm scared. That's a serial killer's answer. So what you consume is very important. And I used to be proud of my Nando's order. I used to think, My Nando's order makes so much sense. It's the bee's knees, it's unbeatable. It's got that mix of healthy greens. It's got that really nice chicken, hot, of course, that's my spice level. And the peri-salted chips for that little bit of, you know what I mean? Maybe some halloumi on the side. And then I found out Rishi Sunak, right, ex-prime minister, and I know, you know, if you're not British, it's probably, even if you are British, you're probably like, which prime minister is that? Because we've had like flipping 100 in the past 5 years. Rishi Sunak went on an interview. This was the darkest day of my year, in all honesty. He went on an interview and they were asking him what his Nando's order is. He went, ho, 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 you know, in capitalist man speak, right? He goes, I like 4 boneless chicken thighs, hot, with peri-salted chips and long stem broccoli. I screamed because I refused to have the same Nando's order as Rishi. Can you imagine if I was at a restaurant ordering Nando's and then the waiter goes, oh, that's Rishi Sunak's order. Drop dead. I can't. And I'm so vocally distasteful of that man that we cannot share anything, including a Nando's order. So I had to find something else to, like, you know, facilitate my addiction. I replaced it right now into the wrap. So I do a chicken hot wrap with some halloumi. I add avocado. I add cheese and peri-salted chips and broccoli. I'm a girl of good taste. But speaking of addiction, speaking of orders, speaking of the joy I get when eating either Popeyes or Nando's, particularly, is this idea of a reward. I use these things to motivate me to go to the gym, to do tasks that I've been putting off, like applying for jobs because I'm technically kind of unemployed, editing podcast episodes, editing YouTube series, and all of these kind of things. I use it as like, you know what, if you do this, you then have this waiting for you on the other side. It's a point of motivation, right? And this is a reward-seeking behavior. And this leads us to our conversation today, all about reward, all about social media addiction, and what is the nice connecting fact between the joy I receive in eating my Nando's at the end of a long, hard week, and also the reason why my TikTok hours keep climbing to the point where I cannot sit and focus on an Outer Banks episode without taking a very, very, very quick Twitter break every 5 minutes. The joining factor is dopamine. And as promised, geniuses, this episode is going to be a deep dive into the hormone of dopamine. I'm going to be talking about specifically dopamine's involvement in the reward pathway. Now, if you are a scientist watching this, if you have an academic background, I'm sorry, because I'm going to really simplify things because I really want this episode to be very digestible and to be easy for our geniuses who might not be scientifically inclined to consume. But don't worry, it's fun, it's amazing, it's flipping funny because I'm the person saying these things. Welcome, geniuses, to this episode of Female Genius.
Female Genius.
I personally think that dopamine is one of the most often misunderstood hormone. You know, it is the kind of almost like, you know, the hormone that became a celebrity even though they didn't really want to be a celebrity and they just wanted to work hard and do really well. But as a result of their hard work and, you know, the field that they're in, there's no choice but they have to deal with the price of fame. And there's a lot of tabloids posting pictures and stories that aren't necessarily true or warping the truth. That's how I picture dopamine in my head. But in basic terms, dopamine is a type of neurotransmitter. And by this, I mean there are a bunch of dopamine-producing neurons that secrete dopamine as a hormone, and this causes different changes inside the brain and the rest of the body. As always, as I emphasize all the time on this podcast, this should be the podcast slogan. This should be the podcast mantra. The brain is complicated. The body is complicated. Everything is connected to everything, genuinely. So even though we are going to be talking today specifically about dopamine's role in reward pathways, it's very important to remember that dopamine has uses outside of reward-seeking behavior and learning and reinforcement learning. Dopamine is being used in motor control, specifically in the basal ganglia, helping us decide what movements to make and what movements not to make. It is used as an inhibitor of noradrenaline in your kidneys. It is used as a vasodilator. It's even used sometimes to reduce the count of your white blood cells and inhibit the release of them. So really and truly, dopamine has many uses around the body. And I think it's very, very important to remember this miscommunication that this dopamine is this big, bad evil in our brain and it's working against us is fundamentally not true. Because outside of the reward-seeking behavior, which is a positive and necessary thing that we need for our survival, dopamine has many amazing uses that allows your body to function every single day. Dopamine is made in very complicated biochemistry processes, and I'm not a biochemist, so we aren't getting into it. But the precursor of dopamine can be made indirectly or directly, either from the non-essential amino acid phenylalanine, or tyrosine. And actually, a really fun fact, which I didn't know until I was researching for this podcast episode, is that actually there are dopamine molecules, or the molecule of dopamine is found in a lot of different foods due to its components being these non-essential and essential amino acids that are very common. However, you can't raise or adjust your dopamine levels through taking in and eating dopamine-boosting foods. The reason why the dopamine from your food can't get into your brain and work on your brain is because we have something called the blood-brain barrier, which is essentially almost like these wall of cells which are selectively permeable in the sense that they only let some things in and they only let some things out in order to protect the brain from things like pathogens and viruses and molecules that you just don't really want in your brain, essentially. And that also includes external dopamine. And if you think about it, it's very important. If dopamine has all of these uses around the body, you don't want the use in this area of the body to affect how it's functioning and circuiting around your brain. In order to try and understand how dopamine plays a role in reward-seeking behavior, we have to dismantle some misconceptions first. Misconceptions I even held until my French supervisor in neuroscience in my second year was like, no. You have everything you know about dopamine is purely incorrect. Even last episode, I mentioned something about dopamine almost being a labeler and not being the cause of the pleasurable emotions that you receive after getting a reward. I found out from researching this episode that was a misconception I had that was wrong, and that dopamine's effect on different brain functions and brain areas can induce these pleasurable sensations. And the combination of things like endocannabinoids and endorphins and other things like that also contribute to the pleasure-seeking experiences. So I was wrong about that. So we're always constantly learning and correcting ourselves because that is the very important component of being a genius. Let's say you are going home and there are 2, maybe 3, 4, 5 different ways to get to your house, right? On one of the ways to get to your house, there is a lemon tart shop. And you usually think, I don't F with lemon tarts. My auntie 5 years ago made me a lemon drizzle cake, and that was the nastiest shit I've ever had in my life, and my auntie should stop making food. So you're like very skeptical, right? And this shop doesn't sell anything else. It doesn't sell strawberry cake. It doesn't sell vanilla cake. All this shop does is lemon tart. It's empty. There are cobwebs outside. But you're like, you know what? What harm do I lose while taking this new way home? You go into the shop and you put your money down. You get your nice, cute little lemon tart. Your expectation of this lemon tart is pretty low. You're looking around the store. You're thinking, how did you guys get your health certificate? This place does not look good, right? And you're expecting the lemon tart to be, honestly, maybe a life-threatening experience that might send you to the ER or to the hospital. However, you take a bite into this lemon tart and your life is changed. You see things, right? Your body starts trembling. It's almost like a religious experience. You have encountered God through the experiences of tasting this lemon tart. It is craziness, right? And so now, every time after that, you are going to be taking that route home just so you can visit that questionable shop for that lemon tart, right? And now you're thinking, Jessie, what the hell are you talking about? Right. So if I was to ask you, at what stage during this whole process of going to get the lemon tart, eating the lemon tart, and all of this, do you think there is a dopamine boost? And what is actually attributed to the fact that we have a dopamine boost, right? And before, or I know a lot of you would say, the fact that the lemon tart was good means that you have a dopamine boost and it makes you want to do it again, which is technically kind of true, but technically not true. Consumption of the lemon tart itself is not what stimulates the dopamine behavior, but rather this whole idea of reward prediction error. The fact that you had very low expectations for the lemon tart, the fact that you thought it would be horrible because your Aunt May made a terrible lemon cake ages ago, the fact that the interior of the shop was really bad, you had your expectations on the floor. But the fact that the consumption of the lemon tart exceeded your expectations, it was novel, it was amazing, it was great. Your body then has, or your dopamine-producing neurons has a spike in activity. The actuality of the reward was a lot better than the prediction of the reward. That is how dopamine works. However, if you went into the shop, if when you were going, you're a big fan of lemon tarts, you've had really good lemon tarts in your life, you've had kind of bad lemon tarts, but overall you know that you enjoy lemon tarts, the shop is pretty well presented, not like 5-star, but okay. And you're going to go in and you're expecting to have a really good lemon tart because loads of people told you the experience is good. You bite into it and it's not a religious experience, but it's an okay lemon tart, right? You would find that your dopamine producing neurons activity doesn't change. There isn't this large spike in dopamine at all because the prediction of what the reward is going to be like meets your expectation. There's no sharp increase of dopamine neuron activity. Let's say if you do really like lemon tarts and you went and bit into that lemon and then outpoured spiders. I don't know, like spiders were crawling down your mouth. You were screaming. You were like, oh my God, what the hell is this, right? Then you're actually going to see a decrease and almost inhibition of dopamine producing neuron activity because the actuality of the reward was a lot worse than the prediction. And your brain is like, we do not want to experience this ever again. And that is kind of how dopamine spikes and boosts work in alignment with reward-seeking behavior. When you have these sharp spikes in dopamine boosts, what we tend to see is this spike in dopamine when you really enjoy something and you didn't expect to enjoy it helps reinforce behavior. And that's why dopamine is so important when we're doing reinforcement learning and other types of learning, right? It helps fine-tune certain neural circuit pathways to make the idea of seeking the behavior more accessible. It makes you want it. It makes you like it more. And your brain pathways become more fine-tuned for seeking this behavior or seeking the lemon tart. For example, the decision to take the other route home may become less and less daunting because you really like the lemon tart. And the idea of the lemon tart is going to drive you to make that decision to go that one particular route home. To the point where you're not even thinking, should I go this way? Should I go this way? You're just continuously going that way. So think of that like that, but in your brain.
Female genius.
So if we want to relate it into how social media works and how the algorithm works and this idea of social media addiction, right? Using our lemon tart analogy almost, and this idea of dopamine being facilitated by reward prediction error. The algorithm or on your TikTok, on your feed, is completely designed to always give you something novel and new and nuanced, right? Even the affinity scroll is constantly bringing new things to your screen, right? And if you're watching a TikTok that's 30 to 45 seconds, you're like, this TikTok is kind of mid, right? It kind of didn't meet my expectations, but the next TikTok is really good. You're going to experience a very immediate boost of dopamine, and dopamine feels good. Your brain likes the feeling of dopamine. Your brain has to like the feeling of dopamine, or we won't be able to learn. We won't be encouraged to do important behaviors that are good for our survival. And so you're scrolling, sharp boost of dopamine, because every 3 to 5 videos, the algorithms kind of figure out what you like and what you don't like. And these videos keep you on the app because dopamine is boosting this behavior. This idea of reaching for your phone every time your phone ping is boosting this type of behavior. Obviously, as I said before, dopamine helps fine-tune neural circuit pathways to make the action of carrying a behavior to receive a very specific reward that you've experienced before in the past that has led to dopamine spikes more and more easier. So every time you have a notification, there is less conscious thought in picking up the phone and scrolling for 30 to 45 minutes and getting lost in that spiral, right? There is less of a barrier because your brain likes it. It knows that, okay, this notification is going to lead me to be on TikTok for 30 minutes. And being on TikTok for 30 minutes means I'm going to be getting constant dopamine spikes for 30 long minutes. It's going to feel great. It's going to feel like such a rush. Of course, neuroscientists are still kind of looking into like the long-term effects. So if it has any damaging effects to your actual brain structures, but this constant immediate firing of dopamine as a result of consuming very short-form content or likes on Instagram or anything around that realm of social media addiction. This can lead us to have or develop addiction type behaviors. And we can have a whole different discussion about dopamine and its relation to addictive behaviors in terms of drug use and alcohol use and everything along those lines. But I said we were going to be specifically talking about social media addiction today. But if you do want it, let me know. Hit me up. Follow the Female Genius social media pages, even though I'm saying social media bad. It's so hypocritical, LOL. Anyway, over time, when you constantly have a large or an excessive amount of dopamine in your brain is plastic. That's another one of our catchphrases for Female Genius. Your brain is plastic. In the sense that I do not mean your plastic water bottle. I mean it in the sense that your brain is constantly changing and developing as a result of the input from its surroundings and the input from your body. It is trying to always become more fine-tuned and better adjusted to help you survive this very complicated simulation that we're living in. That is just how your brain works, and that is how it develops, and it allows you to live a beautiful and rich life and experience new things and learn new things all the time, right? But when you have situations where you have excessive amounts of dopamine in your brain, what your brain does, it does this thing called downregulation or desensitization, in the sense that it either decreases the amount of dopamine receptors found in the brain. So what do I mean by dopamine receptors? When dopamine-producing neurons release dopamine, the way for you to actually get the action or the result, or to get the cascade of signaling pathways, if we're talking about it in the most scientific sense, is that dopamine released by the dopamine-producing neuron binds to a dopamine receptor on a completely other neuron in a completely different part of the brain, and that triggers and stimulates actions inside the cell, which then, on a larger scale, causes those changes in your brain and in your body and beyond, right? And I kind of spoke a little bit in the Genius episode about the different types of dopamine receptors. There's 5. They are G-coupled type receptors, which basically means that, anyway, that's a little bit complicated. But yeah, there's 5 different types of dopamine receptors. And if you want to learn more, then I might do a fitness episode going into detail, because it's actually really hard. So I honestly think that as part of it, this is such a side note, as part of a science degree, I honestly think that they should teach scientific communication a lot more. They should teach scientific communication as a literal component of science degrees, because it is actually a skill, and it's actually very, very difficult to condense very complicated scientific information into very digestible forms that the public can receive. And that is why dopamine is so misconstrued, right? And other things in science are so misconstrued because scientists generally struggle to relay their information. I'm even struggling to. Anyways, that is truly besides the point. But so when you have excessive amounts of dopamine in your system, your brain either downregulates the amount of dopamine receptors you have, or either desensitizes it. Basically, what that means is, in order to protect your brain pathways, or to ensure that things aren't firing when things aren't supposed to firing, it basically makes you more numb towards dopamine. And as a result, you will need more and more dopamine to get the same effects that you did maybe 5-10 years ago when you didn't have a phone or you weren't scrolling on social media and your brain was used to a less amount of dopamine, right? And as a result, that's why you have that situation where I'm sitting, lying, trying to enjoy Pope on Outer Banks, right? And enjoy the way he looks. And I feel bored and I feel restless. And I go up and I pick up my phone for that sharp dopamine boost, because the long form, or trying to watch a long form piece of content, just fully concentrating on it, that dopamine that is producing or releasing is just not enough, right? Because my brain is so used to constant sharp spikes every 45 seconds. Let's go, people. Do you see the issue? Do you see what I mean? And this is not to say that the fact that dopamine is bad. And I think that is one thing I want you to take away from the fact. Reward-seeking behavior, enjoying that lemon tart, right? Enjoying that run, experiencing the joy of finishing a movie or reading a book. All of those things are necessary and important. And we do not want the elimination of dopamine. If you ever, I'm your mom right now. If you ever in your life come across a piece of content like eliminate all your dopamine, or get rid of your dopamine from life, run, because they're trying to kill you, okay? We need dopamine. Dopamine is so important, even within reward-seeking behavior, right? You need it to push you and drive you to do things. It's very, very important for motivation. The issue is with social media addiction and consumption is when our dopamine signals or our brain becomes desensitized to the amount of dopamine present or being fired. So what we want to do is try and hijack their pathway and get our brain used to normal levels of dopamine again. The idea of cutting off all that makes you happy in this quote-unquote dopamine detox. So saying, okay, I am not going to communicate with people. I am not going to consume any shows, TV shows, social media, anything. I refuse to read fiction books and only read non-fiction books as a way of trying to cure your dopamine or reset your dopamine is going to have completely negative effects. It's not, because dopamine is going to be there and present all the time. What you actually want to do to solve your social media addiction is to, first of all, get your brain used to having more long and delayed gratifying forms of dopamine release. You want to replace those habits and behaviors that have been reinforced already of picking up your phone and scrolling with social media with other forms of behaviors that are healthy and more rewarding and don't have that excessive dopamine spike, right? You do not want to eliminate anything fun, because why would you do that? Why would you eliminate everything good in your life, right? Why would you make your life more difficult and harder? It's kind of in the sense what people in some dopamine detoxes, I'm not saying all, I just really hate the word, but some people are advertising their winter arc or their dopamine detoxes, right? To completely try and quit any dopamine. First of all, kind of impossible. But second of all, trying to eliminate anything that brings you any joy and satisfaction or happiness or any motivational pleasure through trying to quote unquote eliminate all dopamine is kind of akin to saying if somebody who's been overeating for many, many years of their life and they recognize actually the way I eat is not healthy and they want to change that. Basically, what you're trying to tell them to do is to stop eating. Don't eat for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Don't eat for a month. Don't eat or consume anything. And then when you come back, your entire body will be reset. It's kind of like the lies that I tell myself when I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do one all-nighter and then go to bed super early the next day and my sleeping patterns is like going to be solved. And I find myself awake at 1 a.m. staring at the ceiling being like, oh shit, I effed up because that did not work. It just made me tired and grouchy the whole day, right? You can't fast your way out of a dopamine addiction, but what you can do is do these following things, which neuroscientists recommend to help deal with a social media addiction.
Female genius.
First of all, identify your triggers. Prompts you to pick up your phone and scroll on social media? Is it the fact you get the ping and the notification from this person posted new content? Or we haven't seen you in a while, come back. That's what episode used to do for me. And that's why I spent like 6 hours on this the other day because I got a notification being like, wow, Troy, your boyfriend in this story misses you. And I'm like, damn, Troy must miss me. I need to go back. Do you see what I mean? Is it notifications? Is this feeling of boredom? Is it this feeling or this itch of, wow, like, I don't really know what to do? Is it loneliness? Is it this idea that you want to feel more connected with people? Over the next week, I implore you to try and maybe keep a journal or just recognize what is the feeling that drives you to pick up the phone, right? And this will help you make the correct adjustments in your life. If it's loneliness, maybe it's scheduling a call with a different friend every day for an hour so you feel more connected to people. If it's the notifications, turn those notifications off. Or in fact, even schedule notifications to only be allowed to come in at a very specific time. You can even turn off notifications for specific apps. Because tell me, why do you need TikTok notifications on? Why do you need your Instagram notifications on? Right? Engage in flow activities. Flow activities is something that you've probably seen on social media, especially if you're in the world of dopamine detox. It's this idea of having those type of activities that make you lose sense of time in itself. For example, for me, it's playing instruments, playing music, working on music, reading sometimes for some people, sometimes is watching a really, really good movie, making a piece of art, playing a sport. Try and find that activity that puts you in that state of, I just kind of forget the world exists. It might take some time and it might take some effort. It may take some time, but it might take some effort. But maybe once a week or every month, challenge yourself to try a new thing, pick up a new language, start learning a new instrument. Try and think back to what you 2 years ago would love and enjoy doing as a child before social media became this anchor in the brain. Is it playing video games? Maybe you can learn how to code to learn how to produce a new video games. All you kind of want to do is replace the amount of time that you have scrolling on the phone with activities that truly bring you joy. Delayed gratification training. I'm a firm believer in forcing yourself to be in situations where the reward or the dopamine spike comes later and not in 30 to 45 seconds. This is very important for your reward pathways and, the dopamine levels in your brain and your brain actually getting used to the fact that actually, you know what? I can watch this 25-minute show without picking up my phone, and the satisfaction of finishing the show can still give me relief and joy. And just reminding your brain that dopamine doesn't have to come every 30 to 45 seconds for life to feel good, It is just this reminder. And I think reading is one of I said it before and I'll say it again. Reading is one of the best forms of delayed gratification training. Pick a book in a genre that you absolutely love. It does not have to make you seem academic and intelligent. If it's Akata, read it, right? If it's Diary of the Wimpy Kid, read it. If it's a series that you used to love as a child and you really want to reread it now, read it. Join a book club, do whatever, because the act of reading a book and that satisfaction you get when you finish and complete a book, all of the storylines, you went along with all the characters, you've enjoyed it, you've experienced it, is just the perfect form of delayed gratification training in a full-powered book, Training for life. It's very important to note that addictive behaviors and things like dopamine and reward-seeking behaviors are also very largely impacted by our genes. People are more susceptible to addictive behaviors than others. That is a fact, right? But we can construct our lives to help us facilitate healthier habits to help avoid these situations. And kind of understanding how dopamine works, I feel like can really help us understand how to better interact with these pathways. And, I'm doing PR for dopamine. It's a good hormone. It's so good for you and it's so amazing. And I think it's PR damage. It's done enough, literally just pre-purpose Justin Bieber. That's where dopamine is right now. So I really wanted to do that. But of course, again, as I said in the beginning, dopamine has many different pathways. If you feel like you are struggling with other addictions that are a little bit beyond scrolling on your phone for hours, I strongly implore you to seek professional help and to greater understand that within a medical setting or a setting where somebody who is a clinically trained psychologist in the fact of drug use or alcohol misuse and all of those kind of things can truly, truly help you. In general, though, I hope you enjoyed this little quick deep dive into dopamine and its relations into social media addiction. Dopamine, I want my check on Monday. I have a holiday to plan. I've done your PR. I hope I've improved it. And in general, if there's any other hormones in specific settings, so maybe you're more interested in learning about dopamine in terms of motor control, right? And how that plays into Parkinson's disease and things like that. If you're more interested in learning more about dopamine and for me to go into more scientific detail, then please just let me know. And I'm happy to give my geniuses what they want. As always, I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. And I think it's actually kind of crazy to say, but there's only going to be, we're on episode 12. There's only going to be 3 more episodes in this season. And then Female Genius is taking a little bit of a break. It's going to have a little rebrand. I've already started planning it and I'm like so excited, but it's going to feel weird to not pick up the mic and be like, hey, Geniuses, for a little while. So it gives you some time to catch up on other episodes and to, deep dive, learn more things, try and carry out some of the habits I've talked about, talk to your friends about it, encourage debate. But you are beautiful, you are excellent, you are incredibly intelligent in your own way. That is your affirmation for this week. And I will see you guys next episode on Female Genius. Bye, guys.
Female Genius.